Hey everyone, welcome back to Putting Bricks to Work podcast. I have Mo Hayat. He is the co-founder and CTO of Abstract. Hey Mo.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on. I've been following you guys for a couple years. There is a throughput with housing, what we're doing, and also politics.
Mhm.
That's what we're going to be
Definitely.
talking about here. But let's get right into your origin story. So tell us more about yourself, how you guys formed Abstract and what Abstract does.
Absolutely. So, my origin story doesn't really isn't really too complex. I mean, I'm originally from Kuwait, was born here, raised in Kuwait my whole life, and came here to study at Loyola Marymount University in Los
Nice.
Angeles.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, the minute I started getting into engineering, and in my undergrad, I was studying electrical engineering. I really started to, have an obsession for it or fondness of looking at things through the lens of systems or making sense of things, and then on top of it also simplifying it or explaining it to people and how it works because it might benefit them in their lives. So I always kind of had that rule set for myself that whatever I was going to head into after graduation, I really wanted to really harp on that educational piece of it. um and just the way the universe works, I guess. Senior year of college, I was talking with my friend Patrick, who is now our co-founder and CEO, and he was telling me about a conversation that he had with a friend of his about the Green New Deal, which was at the time a bill at the federal level, written by or introduced by AOC.
Hmm.
That overarchingly, it was a very massive bill, but just talked about investment in renewable energy and kind of slightly beginning to move away from fossil fuels. But when he was talking with his friend about it, the main thing that he learned was his friend was saying that they were trying to ban all aircraft, and that sounded a little, no, it doesn't sound too reasonable. So,
Yeah.
um, Pat actually went to congress.gov, the actual website, and scrolled through the entire bill and read through the entire bill, which for someone used to the UI of Twitter, Instagram, and a lot of like modern day social media or just general information sites that we have, um, going through that was a very, very painful process.
Yeah.
So the realization that we both came to was, I wonder if there's a way we could do that for legislation, just modernize it and use whatever tools that are being used in very hot industries that day, like e-commerce and so on, to just um, make the ingestion of data stuck to the facts in the legislation very, very easy. And we looped in our friend who's now our co-founder and CPO, Matthew. And yeah, we just started building, I guess, after graduation. We've been through a lot for sure. The funny thing about it is we incorporated about a couple of weeks before COVID hit in early 2020.
Yeah.
And having been through that, having been through all the SVB nightmare, if anyone's been paying attention to that, it's definitely been an interesting time to be a founder, to say the least. But so far we've been doing well. So yeah, I could totally dive into a little bit about the product as well that
Yeah,
we're
please.
building. So
Please.
yeah, definitely. So we are basically building a one-stop shop for everything related to gov affairs, initially within the state of California.
Yeah.
So one thing that we noticed was when COVID hit, a lot of the organizations like contract lobbying firms, nonprofits, state agencies, anything along the lines of that um, their workflows were really impeded by COVID and by forcing them to go remote, and none of it was actually modernized. And when you think about very outdated systems running the overarching system that decides what's legal and what's not in our life, that was a big concern to us, and we were like, we should probably, allocate a couple of resources to fix that. So, um, it just led to a couple of years of long iterations, and it gave us, the product that we have right now, which is currently used by about I want to say between 50 and 75 different organizations across California to track legislation in California in any way that you'd like. So you could see when bills have updates to them, when they're being set for hearing, you can have very specific insights to them. So as of today, we're the only platform across a lot of GovTech companies where if you'd like to see, for example, in the 2021-2022 legislative session,
Mhm.
which bills that Apple has supported, we're able to pull that up for you. And it just gives you, um, with the same data that you're working with, it just gives you vast new insights or tools to work with it and see it in ways that you haven't been able to see before. And that's kind of the same vision that we're heading on right now. So exciting stuff.
Awesome. No, a couple of thoughts was for us and my partner Alex. He runs a land use consulting firm in downtown. So during COVID as well, I was like, "Is there all stop to permitting, planning?" And we're like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, they don't. They're trying to figure out how to work Zoom." And so it
Mhm.
was that kind of
Right.
period where they were doing these meetings over Zoom and
Mhm.
a lot of technical challenges, but it was needed. And I think this, benefit of that was it pushed all the cities to be comfortable with it. And now, even, post 3 years later, they're doing things on Zoom and also in person. So they're starting to, integrate that remote hearing process, if that makes sense, at the city level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, no, let's get right into it. So I really am I'm a big fan of you guys, and I think as I mentioned, housing is politicized right now. We are seeing this in all the articles in California going back and forth
Mhm.
with all the housing bills, and the cities and the municipalities are fighting for local control while the state is coming in. And so there's both sides of this argument. And just so the audience knows, yeah, we're just really just coming at this viewpoint very objectively, right? There's no
Mhm.
pro or yay stance here, but you can still,
100%.
present some of the points for each side and see where we are at,
Mhm.
right? Like what it is. So I want to get into um, the first topic for us is, I mean, we're going to talk about the AB 2011s and the
Mhm.
SB 35s and all of those bills that really speak to infill multifamily, right, in the cities.
Mhm.
But I want to talk about Senate Bill 9. I really want to get kind of your
Yeah.
thoughts on that because I know that's been a bill that has, I want you to share multiple iterations, and it had predecessors to that bill, and then that passed.
Mhm.
And for us, it was just, it was a point where we took a pivot for brickwork, and we highly just focused on SB9 for the past year. So yeah, if you could kind of
Yeah.
share your thoughts on it.
Oh, 100%. And to first touch on the point of iteration, so actually to prep for this, and because obviously, engineering, I have to look at the numbers and the statistics behind everything.
Yeah.
So what I did was I pulled a lot of the data that we collect, or just the massive catalog of data that we have on Abstract regarding legislative information,
Mhm.
dating all the way back to 2007, so the 07-08 session. And I was just very curious to see, we headed into the California legislative scene when housing was already a super, super big topic, and it was one of the bigger ones, to the point where the level of sides is basically more than two-dimensional, if that makes any sense. Just
Right.
reading through the bills and everything, there's, within the Democratic supermajority, there are EMBs and NIMBYs, for example. And then
Yeah.
um, as we get into the insights that I found about SB9 and a lot of the other bills that we're going to be talking about, even at the city versus state level, there's sides that people have taken there. And
Yeah.
it's just very, very interesting. So what I basically did was I pulled two specific figures from all the sessions dating back to the 2007 and 8 one.
Yeah.
And I saw basically the total bills, housing related bills, and then out of those housing related bills, which one were actually chaptered, which means, signed and fully gone through the legislative process. And in 2007 and 8, 9 and 10, and 11 and 12, we kind of see the similar numbers where housing just isn't that massive of a deal. So across all three sessions, the total housing bills make up for about 1 to 2% of all introduced legislation in each of those sessions.
Yeah.
And out of those 1 to 2%, about between 32 and 44% are actually chaptered or passed.
Right.
But when you boil them down to the quantities, that's about 29 bills in 0708, 28 bills in 9 and 10, and then 21 bills in 2011 and 12. However, something happens between the 11-12 session and the 2013-14 session where um, in the 13-14 session, out of 4,800 bills that were introduced, 929 or 19% of them are actually related to housing.
Mm.
So something happened in that session that maybe you can shed some light on because I'm kind of an outsider to this whole housing scene, but yeah, we just have a massive influx of introduced bills related to housing. And since then, for the sessions in the past 10 years, the number has just kept growing. So we went from 19 and 13 in the 2013-14 session to 20, 24, and then with this past legislative session, it was 25. Um, so, this one specifically, the 21-22 session, as we're about to see, is definitely one of the more consequential ones. And there was a lot of very cool data, like data points that we picked up on that I just love, love, love to get into.
Oh yeah, I love this data. And again, I had remarked before, I love when I have engineers on, right, and digging deep in the data because really
100%.
that's where you get a lot of insight. So not a lot of people want to
Mhm.
focus on that, but that's where a lot of the information is. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
my thoughts on that also during that period is that I
Mhm.
think that was around the time that I think there have been more, the homeless issue, the unhoused issue has always kind of been around in LA and
Mhm.
California, in San Francisco here, over a lot of years. But it was more profound then. I think there were a lot of articles, and you were, and it's just what you see out in the streets where it started to get compounded, right? And so I know
Yeah.
now everyone's used to these tent shelter,
Mhm.
kind of cities in their own all over, right? Under the freeway passes and, in Venice Beach and Santa Monica and all of that. But, 10, 15 years ago, there weren't, right? So I think it
Mhm.
started to get and build momentum where we know and recognize it was a problem. And so that was putting pressure, state level, city level. What are we doing
Mhm.
to deal with this, if that makes sense? So.
Exactly. Yeah, and I definitely, you mentioned you were based in San Francisco, and I'm based in Los Angeles, and that's, I can't drive 5 minutes to a nearby, grocery store or anything like that without seeing those encampments. So, having lived here for 7 years, I've definitely noticed the increase of them. They're way more frequent
Although
now. And
we're based also in LA, so we see the same
oh, no
thing
way.
coming downtown.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Awesome, awesome.
SB9, we're gonna get into infills, and I really, I want you to really give us also kind of a real world example of users that come to your platform on
Mhm.
this, because I think that's such a value. So we're seeing this is where
Mhm.
we want to drive a lot of interested stakeholders and parties your way, because so brickwork high level, hey, you want to
Mhm.
build housing in your property, that's what we do. And so it could be a single family lot and you want to build ADUs, or start to go, well, what does SB9 mean? Can I split the lot? Can
Mhm.
I put duplexes? And then on the info route, it's like, oh, can I really build 200, 300 unit apartments, right, in Culver City or whereabouts? And so we help do that. But everything is tied to all the inherent zoning. That's just
Mhm.
use case number one. And then you have all the overlays in the cities, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, that has been passed
Mhm.
over decades, that are still in place, are still that you have to address. And then there's all these layered state housing bills. So there's even more need for abstract. There's more need of
Mhm.
education, condensing that information where those bills you guys I know are reading through, but
Mhm.
like what is the takeaway from that, if that makes sense? Like so condense it down to like these bullet points. What is the intention? What can it can't do? And so,
Mhm.
that's why I see extreme value in abstract, by the way. Like you guys, yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're kind of in that role where when we get like an SB9 report, right? I want to kind of still touch on this is there are developers that have been building like on the west side or all these other different neighborhoods in LA for 10, 20, 30 years, and
Mhm.
there's 1 year in, I still have conversations with them where they're just like, I still don't think you could do that, John. Are you
Mhm.
sure? Where in I'm like, I'm sending them the LA implementation memo. I'm like, it shows it right here, and here's the
Mhm.
state bill, right? So I'm trying to put two and two together, and they still can't wrap their heads around. I'm still not going to jump in until I see
Mhm.
more like concrete evidence that you could do it, right? So
Exactly.
how would you address those kind of issues with a user that wants, uh, kind of like a summarized, simplified explanation of, say, even Senate Bill 9, SB9 or thereabouts?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one of the main selling points behind abstract is we give you a full um overview of the bill, in addition to some foundational data that a normal, like everyday government affairs person would go through.
Yeah,
So to the everyday person, say if you're a real estate developer, for example, and you want to understand the rules that, or the at least the legal framework that you want to operate in between,
hmm,
um reading 100-page, 700-page, 200-page bill with a grotesque amount of
yeah,
amendments and
yeah,
changes and that type of stuff, it starts getting very overwhelming very quickly.
I agree.
If you don't understand legislative language or anything like that, it just gets very confusing. So we worked with a lot of people who are on our advisory boards, who are industry veterans of the government affairs space, as well as, you know, going out and just getting a pulse of what's going on in the legislative industry. And we really wanted to understand, okay, you obviously don't have the time to read through an entire bill. So
Yeah,
at a glance, what would you like to know about it?
right.
And what we noticed was, whether it was a lobbyist who just cared about housing bills, or a lobbyist that cared about agriculture bills,
Mhm.
or a state agency that cared about this specific policy issue, it all boiled down to a single pattern of the timeliness behind it, or like the timelines, the lifespan, the different versions, and then more specifically, outside of the legislature related to that bill, what's happening, who's taking stances on it, who's working on it, that type of stuff.
Right.
And that's pretty much what we've built in terms of an initial page that you can use to view a lot of these bills.
Mhm.
One thing that we offer as well is a public view of those bills. So I can actually, hopefully, after this, send you the link that we have to SB9, and you could just see everything on there without needing an account. Um, but the one thing that I think, I might be biased because I know we put a lot of work into, is the selling point of that last point that I mentioned, which was, showing you what's happening to the bill outside of it. And our biggest kind of project that we're kind of slowly but surely iterating on right now is, committee analyses, and then showing you who's taken a support versus oppose position on the bill.
Right. That
So,
is very important information, actually.
oh yeah. So, and the whole thing about, understanding the levels of adversaries, whether it's at the levels of government, or
Yeah,
whether it's related to, YIMBYs versus NIMBYs or anything like that,
yeah,
you really start to see that once you actually just pull out all that information and read it in a very formatted way.
right.
Um, but yeah, so like for the sake of example, I could definitely just head into SB9 and start talking about it. Um, so I mean, I think a lot of your listeners right now would probably know what SB9 is, or what it's trying to do, or what it tried to do before being passed.
Right.
So not to dive into that and kind of preach to the choir here. Digging into a little bit of the committee analyses, we saw quite a few notable names that people wouldn't have thought have been related or have been interested in housing initially,
Right.
take very interesting positions on this bill. And then when you look at the type of organizations, it even makes it just slightly weirder.
Mm,
So the for this example, I basically picked up the most recent committee analyses, which was, if I recall correctly, and I can double check right here, was a Senate floor analysis that was done on the 28th of August, 2021.
I see.
So yeah, so with that one, it was basically an analysis written just to get a better understanding of the implications and the consequences of this bill
Mm,
should it pass.
right.
Um, and it was used as, a record of, here's the history of votes that has happened in all the previous committees that it was in,
Mhm.
and with the current final vote on the Senate floor, this was the final, outcome of it, basically. So, digging into a little bit of the support side, we saw a very an unusual amount of organizations and cities take both the support and oppose stances, but
Mhm.
specifically on the support side,
Mhm.
we saw a lot of very notable corporations. So to list them off just a little bit, Schneider Electric was one of them
Okay.
who was in support of SB9. Zillow was in support of SB9, which was
Mhm.
very interesting because I know, they're a very big name in the prop tech scene at least.
Yeah.
The next two are a little interesting. So Facebook and the Chan Zuckerberg initiative were very big proponents of SB9.
Mm.
Um, having because both of them kind of took a position, I'm sure there's one person behind both positions most probably, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that's all just up to interpretation. We just have the records on these PDFs, but
No, it's
the
very
rest that
interesting.
follow are
Yeah.
basically
Mhm.
uh-huh.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, the rest are basically kind of expected. So they're basically just AARP,
Yeah.
and just a collection of YIMBY organizations across California. And looking at it from, when I saw this support initially, this list of people who've taken a position, as an outsider, it kind of seemed like it would be greatly helpful to them,
Mm.
specifically in places like San Francisco, because I spent a little part of, the summers of my childhood growing up of yeah, my childhood growing up in San Francisco. And um the one thing I kept hearing just talking to different people and getting an understanding of why rent is so high and why everything is just so expensive there is there's just not enough houses and there's so much demand and there's so many people trying to fit in a super super tiny area.
Yeah.
So, you know increasing the amount of the supply, super basic economics, is definitely going to meet up with that increasing demand, and that price wouldn't be as high, that price tag to get a home. um and then also, and I'd love you to correct me if I'm wrong here, but from a developer's perspective,
Yeah.
uh it's just more business because there's more houses to sell.
Right.
The if you look at homes in San Jose and Palo Alto and all these different places, they're always the super standard households where they're, rather spacious. They have the now famous garages where all the big tech companies started, and then a massive backyard, and they're just basically a single family home. So if you split that up, there's more houses to sell, there's more of everything to kind of go around.
Yeah.
um
To that point, what I would say is that I when we were tracking Senate Bill 9, I think we saw the precursor and the state assemblymen that were kind of pushing, Weiner, Atkins, everybody,
Mhm.
the usual for housing, was that they were taking a look at ADU laws and how that progressed as far as 2016, I believe, and it didn't have enough bite. It wasn't as strong. It
Mhm.
was okay. We'll leave it to city decisions on whether to allow, and they
Mhm.
clearly majority of them ended up really, you know, putting restrictions on height, setback, size, and it was impossible to build an ADU. It's like, oh, okay, so I could get a 300 square foot ADU and that's it, right? Like, so I remember in
Mhm.
those iterations, and so it they really strengthened that bill over time, learned lessons, and then even the SB9 bill was like, okay, well, now we know we have to make clear language of what the minimums are. And I think that's one takeaway is that they said, okay,
Mhm.
cities cannot impose any sort of overlays or guidelines or restrictions that will prohibit a building of 800 an 800 square foot unit, and you have to abide by this and stuff like that. So that what I see. But then when you're with that's fascinating with
Mhm.
who those backers were. I think it's so nuanced in that there were the bill was really intended for intergenerational wealth, and there were
Right.
families that were landlocked and had equity
Mhm.
but did not have the wherewithal to build and create rental income that they could pass along to their kids. All great, but then there's more to it than that, right? It's like the implementation, how you're utilizing, and then now we're seeing that a majority of the cities are against SB9, suing SB9, and then that bleeds
Mhm.
into builders remedy, which is now there's this big
Right.
fight with Huntington Beach and the state where they're both suing
Mhm.
each other. Politics aside, whether YIMBY or NIMBY aside, Huntington Beach
Mhm.
is not going to win against the state, right? It's just not
Right.
going to look good,
Yeah.
and and there's going to be turnover, and it just really depends on the residents of Huntington Beach whether they want to prolong
Mhm.
this, or is there going to be a change, right? And they are going to start allowing this. So that's kind of my
Exactly.
thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, and that definitely makes sense because the digging through the opposition side with that explanation that you just gave,
Yeah,
100% makes sense because there's like on the actual analysis on the Senate floor, there's a gigantic paragraph listing all the cities that were actually opposed to it in Huntington Beach, Laguna Beach, and it
Torrance.
just
Yeah, there's
oh yeah,
yeah,
the list goes on definitely. Um, but the interesting thing is, I as an outsider again just really try to relate to both or try to see the viewpoints from both, and I definitely think it makes sense, because obviously on the support side there's a lot of people who are in the prop tech scene like
yeah,
Zillow or
yeah.
would benefit from more housing like
Of course,
the yeah like Facebook, Schneider, the Chan Zuckerberg initiative.
yeah.
um, and then I'm sure if you keep scrolling on that list, because it's a very long list of supports, the YIMBYs and then all the real estate specific like organizations that took a stance in the support stance um would definitely benefit from something like that. But I kind of as someone doing engineering at an early stage startup, I could kind of relate with a lot of what the cities are opposing, which is, if we look at the other bills like AB 2011 and
Yeah,
2334, the reasonings listed in those analyses for the opposition from those cities and from those organizations who oppose these bills is always just lack of control, losing control, and
yeah.
then um, it being unsure whether it can maintain the proper infrastructure as a city for all these new housing units.
Yeah, I can't
And
agree more with that too. Yeah, they don't have the
yeah,
infrastructure to all of a sudden. So yeah, I love that you brought that point up because I also want to say, even though the intentions of these bills is
mm,
I agree with, right? It's the execution, it's the devil in the details, right? So it's like,
exactly.
did these bills come with a budget to then
Mhm,
beef up infrastructure for all the local cities to implement? No,
exactly.
it just gave a clear,
Mm,
you have to implement by January 1st, go. And the cities are like, wait
mm,
a minute, right? Like, we got to
right.
revamp our permitting system. We don't have any online permit. There's a fair amount of cities in California that still don't have a
Yeah,
meaningful way to file a permit online, and you have to go in person, right?
exactly.
So how do you then all of a sudden create a system and efficiency to address everything and to implement. And yeah, so I do
Yeah.
agree on that point. The infrastructure is not there to really.
Yeah, and that definitely hit too close to home where you have,
Yeah.
not that we've been through it at all at Abstract, but that typical, tech company stereotype where a salesperson walks into an engineering department, goes, "Hey, we want this new technology so we could sell better," and just like, okay, but there's so much more that we need to talk about.
There's other
Um,
underlying issues. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but
Okay, so go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I definitely think that's the concern from the city's perspective. And there was one specific bill, which was AB 2097, which on the very last part of their summary of the bill, called the Legislative Council's Digest,
Yeah.
which basically says that, um, let's see if I have the right thing here. Yeah, so it basically says that the state's not going to cover any additional costs if this bill were to pass.
Mm,
So if you're a city that currently everyone wants to move to, but only has a super tiny community, and you're not really making much in terms of annual revenue,
right.
from taxes or anything, it's, now you all of a sudden double your houses, and you have to pay, Lord knows, plumbers, electricians, and all that to basically upgrade your entire grid,
Yes.
um, to make room for them. And it's, yeah, where's that money going to come from? So
Right.
that's where I see a lot of the hesitation on, and it makes sense, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now what we're pointing out is there's intent and there's execution, and it's not a clear cut yes or no, yay or nay
Hmm.
kind of response. It's more like, okay, we see a clear problem in the lack of
Hmm.
housing. I was recently, someone had mentioned, hey, I watch your podcast and you always talk about housing. Why don't you mention affordable housing? Okay,
Right.
that's everyone listening. I am a proponent of affordable housing. There is just
Hmm.
some basic unit or just macroeconomics in play where
Hmm.
more supply pushes down price points and it becomes affordable. And of course, all of some of the bills that we're going to talk about, SB 35, right? 2011, these all have an affordable trigger.
Hmm.
So let's get right into it actually. So SB 35 has been around actually for years. It's just was little known, like SB 9 was underutilized. So, and then
Hmm.
AB 2011 or 2011 came, and then that was like, oh, what? We could do this and that. And it was like, well, you also have another option, SB 35. So
Right.
there's this inefficiency that I think both our companies represent could be the solution, which
Hmm.
is still boils down to we don't know what our options are, and there's a part of it that we provide, which is the zoning and the buildable envelope. These are just givens, like you have to abide by.
Hmm.
Then there's also another part of this, which is why I like you guys, is because, well, look, there's a slew of housing bills that you could utilize to also that gets more density and could fit this, give you more ROI for this lot or parcel versus
Hmm.
non-use of it. And so they're like, well, but there's too many. What are you talking about? I don't understand, right? Like, so
Right.
that's where Abstract comes in. I'm gonna definitely link all your website, but all of the information for these housing bills on the
Hmm.
show notes. And I think everyone that's listening or the developers really should have someone even on their team just review the bills, the 2011s,
Hmm.
SP35s, because they come to us and ask, and some of the times we try to give high level explanations on them, but there is part and parcel like really government analysis side of this. But yeah, so 2011 and SB35, for everyone that doesn't know about these bills, is their intention was to provide, just like transit oriented communities or districts, there's always this push and pull where, okay, if the developer has to have something pencil, and what I mean by pencil is there is a cost to the land or the dirt, there's a cost to build, and then they have to have a return. That's just a given for any type of development. To meet that
Hmm.
gap, affordable uses low income housing tax credits basically in grants, right? That
Hmm.
meets the 25% gap. And then the market rate is just, no, I need a lot more density, right? To that, then that's more income and valuation, and that's how I could get projects to pencil. Well,
Mhm.
these bills go great. We will give you more density. We will give you a
Mhm.
bump up, 50% density, 60, 70, 80. But for that, we need a requirement, a set aside for affordable units. That's what these bills are. They're
Right.
just different kind of recipes of the same thing, generally speaking.
Mhm.
It's just like, we'll give you more, we'll allow, retail zones to build housing, we'll fill the gap for this and this, but the trigger is, are you hitting 50% affordable for one bill? Is it,
Right.
20% for one bill? So each of the bills address different triggers and maybe different use cases, but high
Mhm.
level, it is providing affordable set aside for getting more market
Mhm.
rates so that you could pencil that project.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to dive into both of the points that you mentioned with, like, for example, AB 2011,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like there's a better story that we could tell as, people in very complex industries that can teach the everyday person or someone who's very well invested and acquainted with this space,
Yes.
um, about the systemic implications of this bill.
Right.
Because if I'm someone who only cares about real estate or only cares about the building of the houses, and I don't really care about every other cog in that system, like construction workers or anything like that,
Right.
I could see a bill like AB 2011 and be like, this is amazing, I love it, it's
Yeah.
great. They
Yeah.
want, and one of the requirements, is in AB 2011 is that certain wage and labor standards have to be met. So all
Really.
construction workers need to be paid at least at the prevailing rate of wages as
Yeah.
specified in the bill and all that. So um, with a lot of those, a lot of the supports on that bill specifically in the most recent analysis is cities, housing corporations, organizations basically representing construction workers that pretty much say that this is going to be a net positive way in fixing, consequentially, of course, California's, like, at that time, 2.5 million home deficit
Yeah.
by accelerating housing production at all income levels.
Right.
That's what a lot of the supporting organizations basically summarized
Right.
would why as the reason behind why they would uh you know propose this to be an actual amendment to the law. But
Right.
um a lot of the people who opposed it were basically organizations that represented construction workers that said that in the absence of the provisions that a lot of unions would basically need to be formed to make sure that all those bumps up in wages and standards are actually met, there won't be a lot of protection for the workers building these new homes, and
Right.
that just leaves a lot of room for potential abuse and just malpractice and all that type of stuff.
Right.
um and that's that, like, when I was reading through AB 2011, that's when it started really becoming clear to me that everything in this legislative space is a system, and these bills are very obviously dated and very, what's the right word that I'm looking for, they're super dated and they're super, overwhelming, I think is the
Yeah.
best way to put it,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, it's just all text here and there, and it's super hard to read. And if you're in government affairs, it's a very, very fast-paced industry, so you just need to move really quickly.
Yeah.
um you miss out on a lot of the core things that this is presenting, which is just, hey, we're going to increase this and increase this, but that means that something is going to have to take the hit, or something, or we're going to need to
Yeah.
get some more funding somehow. And speaking purely from the legislative perspective, that's where, like, the budget comes along,
Yeah.
because now you can have more spending on different things. And
Right.
I think the one nice fun thing about engineering, or working on engineering, as stressful as it is, obviously, but the one fun thing about working in engineering in a space like this is, for the lack of a better phrase, it's a playground, because everything that you do for the first time hasn't been done in this industry before, just because, you know the legislative scene is very old and has its ways.
Yeah.
And a lot of the companies in there are not necessarily the fast iterating, highly moving, high tech startups and all that. So heading in there and saying, oh, let's use this one tool that DoorDash used to route drivers to their restaurants and
Mm.
people placing orders. Let's use that to see where in the cities we can actually find people who would like oppose or support a bill or
Right.
would probably
Right.
be on the same topic on something. It's that outsider's perspective really starts coming in, and it just becomes amazing because you just have the entire universe to just play around with. And it's eventually like what I'd love to get to as the engineering vision of abstract is showing that risk as a system,
Mm.
and just saying that on the bill you could just say, well, hey, this means that as a real estate developer, if you're a real estate developer using abstract, um, this means that the costs necessary or like the amount of time to get a permit approved is going to be cut in half, but you're going to have to spend more on this side. So it just presents you with all the objective data that you can then make a decision on. And
No, I
I
love
just
that
love
point.
that idea.
I love that point. I'm going to continue on that point. Let me
For
do
sure.
a little bit deeper dive there. So
Mhm.
essentially, what I love about abstract too is that it becomes a tool that it's very agnostic on any side of politics, but it understands that you still live, we all live, work within the realm of politics to get things done,
Mhm.
right? So we're so politicized. Forget about that. Just the mechanics of passing bills and getting the majority's voices heard is also
Mhm.
broken. I know I led with just the permit, and yeah, of course, that is
Mhm.
very surface layer retail layman going, oh, yeah, you're fixing that. That'll be the first thought. But it's actually deeper than
Right.
that. What you're saying is, okay, you are anti SB9, you're anti all
Mhm.
these bills. That's your right as a voter to do. But what are actionable steps that you could take on that
Mhm.
side to to really look deeper into the data, who the opponents and who the proponents were of anything, and you could
Mhm.
mobilize and come up and have political power. So it's really a tool for the minority that then realizes, no, there is a majority. But again, with voting,
Mhm.
it's not that, it's a sample size. Not there's no 100% vote,
Right.
right? So like we're given
Exactly.
sample sizes of representative, but if you feel inclined, take action. There are ways to use the data and use abstract to formulate a response or a counter to whatever you want, but you need to access the data. You need to understand the mechanisms of how this is working, and
Mhm.
you guys create a frictionless way so that it's not just the insiders, which is so unfair, right? So politics are the power of the few because people don't feel like, oh well, but I gotta make it easier. Can I vote by text? I don't want to go to the voting booth. Like that alone is
Mhm.
creating, only 20-30% people showing up to vote. So
Right.
I get what I get what that is. Is that kind of where I'm where the
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. I think it's definitely, there is a lot of discourse, and I think, especially in the last couple of years, which actually inspired us to start Abstract. It's been, the discourse is there, and whatever side of the aisle you're on,
right,
whatever issues you care about,
right?
we just know that there is 100% a passion and willingness, specifically in the younger generations,
Oh yeah,
in advocating for their agendas,
yes,
right? And you're seeing people go to great lengths to push them forward and
yeah,
get a better understanding of the government so that they could, you know, be that voice that represents a lot of people that they feel are misrepresented. But seeing it from, again, an outsider's perspective, I 100% think that it's, I think the best way to put it is that's awesome that there's discourse happening,
mhm,
but if everyone has their own data source and they're going off of that and using it as a source of truth,
yeah,
you're not going to have a constructive conversation.
I agree.
So if you centralize those data sources into this is what the bill actually says, here's the
Yeah,
easiest way to read it.
yeah,
Um, you're obviously in the US, you're free to form your own opinions about it.
Sure.
We're fortunate to live in a country where you could do that. And it's just as long as it happens from the same data source,
I agree.
we feel like that those discourses can actually become very actionable. And
Yeah.
that's the hope. So,
We need a Wikipedia of every application or every kind of vertical, meaning the
mhm.
problem is every data is siloed and all the social media algorithms create that and compound that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, you like Earth is flat. Here's 8 more
Right.
videos that cement that the Earth is flat. And now
Mhm.
Google and Facebook and all these, tech companies are finally adding a counterbalance and going, oh, you've watched
Mhm.
too much flat Earth content. Here's one from MIT on your cell phone proving that the Earth isn't flat, right? Like some basic
Right.
science on
Exactly. Yeah.
satellites that orbit and how does that
Mhm.
get up there? But there's has to be a counter. It can't just be spoon fed wrong or disinformation or wrong information.
Exactly.
Okay, so Mo,
Mhm.
this has been a great conversation. I think
Ooh.
we've touched upon abstract, we've touched upon housing, the throughputs of housing being like everything's being politicized. So I'm not surprised that housing isn't
Yeah.
politicized. And just for the audience, when we mentioned YIMBY and NIMBY, I had this when I
Mhm.
first started Brickwork. I was like, what are YIMBYs and NIMBYs? They're very
Right.
simple acronyms. A YIMBY
Mhm.
is yes in my backyard, and NIMBY is no in my backyard, which just means
Mhm.
backyard meaning not well, also now my backyard, but that's your house, meaning your neighborhood is your backyard. And
Mhm.
they have,
Right.
so there is the local control where pre SB9 or pre ADU, you had what's
Mhm.
called the small lot subdivision law. It's still in
Mhm.
application in all over the states, different variations of the rule in the cities. But essentially, you go a year throughout the process, going through plan check, going through all the steps that you have to take. But towards the
Mhm.
end, when you've already upfronted the cost for everything, you are now subject to a hearing, and the hearing is based on, are you a coastal city, it's subject to the coastal
Mhm.
commission, right? Or even not that, just your neighborhood planning commission. And they could say no to you adding a unit in your own backyard, right? And the property that you own because you're splitting the lot. They could add conditions, which are okay, we think you should have a higher setback, or we don't agree with two-story because it's going to affect viewpoints from your neighbors. And you get what I'm saying, right? So they add these arbitrary conditions, and if you meet them, then you've come out of the other end with not what you were intending to build, but you got an approval. Or worst case, you spent all that money and you didn't get an approval. So
Mhm.
this process had to be fixed. It's broken, right?
Mhm.
So like we're not here saying that SB9 and ADU is the perfect solution, but
Mhm.
to counterbalance the point of the people that want local control, great. Have local control, but the counter to local control is also have a path to make things easier, and there is housing at the other end. Yes, you need
Mhm.
budgets. Yes, you need infrastructure. All of those are yeses. But in the end, it's also how do you get housing? How do you get the housing out there approved? So, it's not a perfect solution
Mhm.
at all. As you can
Exactly.
see, right? The more you dig, the more you actually understanding the complexity and problems. I'm sure that you.
True. Yeah. I mean, to give you my perspective of it, I mean, before you reached out, all those years back, I was just, blind to the whole issue of housing. I knew it was a big issue in California, but it wasn't until recently when I actually put together this report that I really got an understanding of it. And I was like, okay, I do understand the supports, I do understand the oppositions, and just navigating real estate
Oh,
in California, let alone like in the rest of all the other states, uh, can really, really be quite confusing and complex. So,
and
making
fervent
sense of it is,
support and
uh,
passionate responses, as you can see.
right.
And so it's psychology, right? So I think
Hmm.
even for brickwork, when SB9 passed, there's Homestead in up in Silicon Valley. They're a startup. that was vertically integrated architects, GCs, and everyone there to propose implementing SB9 to homeowners in their backyards. Hey, we'll help you build it. We'll front the cost. We'll split the lot. And then we could sell it at the end. And we were like, oh, that's a great idea. Help create a frictionless process for homeowners to utilize and build more housing. But even us in our early stages, it's all your nest, it's your psychology. It was, even though there is a carrot out there, which is, oh, you build it, you make money, there's more equity. It's more nuanced than that. It's like, but I don't want to go through that, right? I don't want to disrupt my life. Come on, like I'm okay where I'm at. You don't need to come in here. And then I don't want a neighbor because I bought this house to have my personal space. So, you know, my response to that was, that is why, even though I am a proponent of the bill, the implementation and execution should be the choice of whoever wants it and does it. Does that make sense? So like there are going to be vast neighborhoods that don't want to do this. That's perfectly fine. You know, like I'm also, you know, even though I'm here and talking brickwork, I think the problem is big enough and there's enough opportunities and parcels so that everyone can have their decision on what they want. So
100%.
Okay, great. Well, look, Mo,
good times.
This was I'm so glad that we got together to do this. And let's any final thoughts on kind of, you know, what you guys have planned maybe in this year and beyond? Like, what are some exciting stuff that you can share?
Oh man, let's see. So we're definitely, you know, we're a early stage team and we're moving at the pace of an early stage team, so things change quite a bit. But I think with a lot of the points that we mentioned and a lot of the pain points that we mentioned, I'll just say that we're moving unbelievably fast and growing as a team very fast to address all those. So I'm hoping we can get to that vision very, very soon.
Awesome. I could relate. Same early stage. You're a little bit ahead of us. We're just crowdfunding our seed round right now, so a little bit earlier, but completely get it. Yeah, at this level, it's pivots, slight pivots, whatever you want to call it as a pivot, right? Like there's all these things you have to just be flexible and move. It could cause a lot of late nights, which I'm sure you're experiencing.
Oh yeah, not a stranger to those.
Awesome. Well, Mo, thank you so much for being here. Look forward to working together. Look, I'm going to have all the links in the show notes, and also we're going to be sharing it with all of our users that really want kind of a summary and a deep dive to all these bills that are passed currently and want to kind of get ahead of that. And also what we talked about in the deeper point, you know, if you are watching and you are wanting to affect change or some sort of new iteration of a bill, it's in your power to do so. You just need to understand that these now, like Abstract, is creating a way to break in and understand how these bills are formulated, who the people that have backed these bills, and then that it's still it's every voter's right to be able to want to form and come up with their own solution or thereof. So there you go. Thanks so much, Mo. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me again. This was awesome.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.